there was a king of Persia. His name was Achashverosh. And he made a party. Told you you're going to know the story. It was a drinking party. How do you say drinking party in Hebrew? Lishtot is to drink. A drinking party. Mishteh. He made a mishteh. It says that in the Megillah. For all of his servants, for all of his ministers, for all of his dominions, people under his rule. He was an emperor. How many countries did he have in his empire? No. 100 is closer than 20. 127. Like I always say, it's a good book. You should read it sometime.
It's close. 27 and 21.
You made us read it in class. The whole thing.
I forgot the 100.
I did?
Yeah. It's a very
Good.
short book.
It is.
Like
10 chapters.
15
Exactly. You'd be really smart if you did that. Maybe in your free time. Instead of studying Kabbalah from rabbis on the internet, read the book. Might be the first thing to do before you study those other stuff. And before you go to work, on your way to work, Eov, whatever it is.
I read like a few weeks back.
So how come you didn't know how many countries were in Achashverosh's kingdom?
They have to learn like one by one.
Yes, exactly. That's what you have to do. Not read it and forget it. 127 countries. Anyways, they all came. And he made it big. Mishteh. And then, at the end of that party, he had another 7-day mishteh, where he invited the closest friends. And he asked his wife to come and parade herself. And she said, no. She's not coming to the mishteh. Because she had her own mishteh with the women. Very frum. They were very frum in Persia. They had a men's and a women's mishteh. Really struggling with that new cup. You think it's worth it?
I don't know.
Anyways. And then she gets off with her head. You know the story?
Mm-hmm. I thought they hung her.
Right. The truth is, it doesn't say what they did to her.
What was her name?
And then
What was her name? Vashti. Need a new wife. Who do they find a new wife?
So they send.
They do a beauty pageant.
172.
Esther is taking 127.
127 provinces, and then Esther is the fairest of them all. And they say, "Oh, what do you want from Vashti's treasury? Whatever you want." And she says, "I don't need anything."
It's not from Vashti's treasury. It's about getting herself ready to come in front of the king. Her perfume and her makeup and her dress.
But Esther was green, so.
It's a very interesting midrash that people know and misunderstand.
But
Yeah, that's right. She was a Martian.
like-
She was a Martian. Okay, she.
But there's an interpretation that she.
Oh, there's an
has a green
interpretation.
aura. Like she has
Oh.
because she had this grace, this favor from God, that she was going to be picked. By
You read the book. You read the book.
I did read the book.
Good.
But I also watched the YouTube video with this person.
Vashti is from India?
Vashti's from India.
She was from Babylon. According to our sages, she was the daughter of Nebuchadnezzar.
Very close, I think, because the name Vashti is Indian name.
Yeah.
Vashti is Persian. All the names of the
But there's a
Megillah
lot
are
of
Persian.
Everything
Indian
in
from Judaism.
What's my point? If you let me tell the story a little bit quicker. Esther gets chosen,
Well, there's not everything.
Yeah.
and Haman rises to power.
And then Mordecai makes Haman mad, and then he was like, I have to kill every single one of these guys.
And then Mordecai convinces Esther to go and plead for the Jewish people. Remember that?
All this
And
problem
what
is
does
caused by
Esther start? What does Esther ask for? She comes in front of the king. She asks, King Achashverosh,
Let's have a feast.
Let my people go.
Let's have a feast and invite
let's have a
Haman.
feast and invite Haman. Haman's feeling on top of the world.
Oh, he's a great guy.
And then
Let's
she
have
goes
the
to the
party.
feast. She comes to the feast, And what is she at? The king says, listen, you can have up to half the kingdom, whatever you want, Queen Esther. I love you so much. Take whatever you want. You know what she asked for?
This guy's head on a pike.
Not yet.
Not yet. You're right.
What does she say? I want you and Haman to come to another feast
You're right.
tomorrow.
You're right, I forgot that.
And at the second feast,
Sounds like she's costing the taxpayers a lot of money.
But she fasted for a few days prior, so
Maybe
it balances out.
bottom line, at the next feast, she spills the beans and she says, there's someone, an evil man, who's trying to kill me and all my people. And the king says, who is such an evil person?
Ahasuerus.
She's saying to Ahasuerus, who is such an evil person?
It was Ahasuerus.
Him! Haman! Haman is the evil one. This is all happening at the feast, at another feast, at another feast. The entire story of the Purim plot and destruction and redemption, it all happens around feasts.
Like Game of Thrones.
I've never seen it, but I've heard that there's such a thing.
It's like a political drama. They're all feast.
It's always around the feasting. Feasting was a big thing. It still is a big thing. We have feasts all the
In Game of
time.
Thrones, there's this
We don't
wedding.
wear togas as much, but we do have feasts.
There's this wedding and then everybody gets murdered.
Shakespeare, somebody.
I have two questions.
They throughout civilization, the history, people have feast. Yes.
Two questions.
Oh, you have to pay extra for two. Start with one.
Okay, first is all this trouble was caused by Mordechai.
Wow.
That's what
You are not alone. You are not alone. Apparently, some of the Jewish people. That's right. That's right.
And everyone is
Terrible.
blaming Haman. But the root of all this trouble is also Ahasuerus.
What would you do?
Wait, is that your second question?
You can.
The first question is, isn't Mordechai guilty? And the second question is, isn't Ahasuerus guilty?
Yeah.
And the answer is, you may be right. But Ahasuerus more, I see him being guilty because, what's he letting this evil person rule his, kingdom, and he's in charge, so he's responsible.
Because he killed all of his advisors and then he appointed them.
Could be. Anyways, Ahasuerus, I definitely see him being a bad guy. Mordechai is usually defended because he's the hero. So how can you defend, though, what he did? He got Haman angry. Boy, first rule is don't get the person in charge angry. What was the problem? Why didn't he bow down to Haman? Everybody had to bow down to
There's
Haman.
no king with
There's no king but God,
He
okay.
was too pious.
He has an idol in his necklace.
Some people say he put an idol on his necklace. Mordechai said, we as Jews, we have our red lines. We're nice and all, but when it comes to idol worship, we have to be strong with our faith. That's one interpretation. The other interpretation is that Mordechai has a history with Haman. The Midrash goes into a very long history how once upon a time Mordechai saved Haman's life. And so he didn't have to bow down to Haman. They had a deal. The deal was, right, when Mordechai saved Haman's life, the Midrash says he made him write an IOU on Mordechai's shoe. So Mordechai just had to lift up his shoe, and Haman would remember he swore to, be nice to Mordechai or whatever. So it's a very strange midrash. We have to understand where they came from and what they're trying to say. So the traditional interpretation is Chazal, sages of the 4th century, 4th period, right? From and a little bit afterwards, the sages, the same geniuses who wrote the code of the Mishnah that we live by, all the laws of Tumah, Dara, Shabbos, and Pesach, and Tzitzit, all that they were also great masters of philosophy and lore, and they wrote these midrashim, giving us messages in very
Where do you read
special
these?
ways.
Like
It's a book. It's a book
Midrash?
called Midrash. There's actually many books called Midrash. Yes.
Do you like
Many
it?
different.
I feel
It's
like
collections. Yes.
Read Legends of the Jews.
I have read
That's one collection. That's a modern
That's the Ikata,
restatement.
Yeah.
But we have in the library quite a few
I think
different
we only
Midrashim.
have 3 texts of it.
There's
It's the Midrash said, like the Midrash said.
Midrash says is a modern retelling of Midrash for children, and they did some censorship and some playing, some even historical commentary, which I don't like. But the Midrash says it's a popular children's book. But to the Midrashim, because they're stories, they're very easy to tell to children. But don't make no mistake. These stories are no simple stories, and the authors are not just storytellers. These are the sages, have deep messages to tell us about God and the way He interacts with the world. And anyways, so the history between Mordechai and Haman is much more complicated than what it seems. And on the face of it, though, you ask a very good question. And the sages in the Masechet Megillah, in the Talmud, they say the same thing. They ask Yosef's question. They ask, why didn't Mordechai bow down? He caused the entire anger. If he would have just been submissive to Haman, there wouldn't have been any destruction, any danger in the first place. So there's a discussion there. The simplest answer is because he didn't want to bow down to an idol. To an idol. He's definitely stubborn and stiff-necked, and that's important at the right place. It's all the question is, did he do that at the right place and time? And well, apparently we got out of it, so there's a nice ending to the story. But Mordechai felt that this was a stand he had to make.
God had to, like. Sometimes
you have to stand up to evil. He knew perhaps that Haman was evil, and if he didn't, if he cowed to Haman at this time, probably eventually he'd get angry at something else and want to kill the Jews anyways. So he was decided this is a point we have to stand on principle.
Well, you said this
It would not that
Is it?
because he was a descendant of Amalek. Yes,
Is
part of the
Daniel-
history I was talking about. Yes,
Is Daniel Haman?
Daniel is definitely not Haman. Some people say Daniel is Mordechai.
Oh, is Mordechai Haman?
Was Mordechai married to Esther?
Daniel is a prophet where we learn about his prophecies and how he spoke to the kings of Babylon and foretold about the Persian era. And Daniel was basically then a minister in the court of the Persian king. Well, Mordechai was a minister in the court of the Persian king. Maybe they're one and the same person, right? That's where this comes from, because they're both in the same era, doing the same type of things. Maybe it's the same person. But the simple text is they're two separate people.
Because people say that Daniel is Hatach.
Hatach, yes.
Hatach.
One of
And
those
that Hatach
ministers
is Mahuman, and that Mahuman
is
is
Haman.
Haman.
Yes.
Daniel was
Memuchan. There's a lot. We have to understand what the simple reading is. There are a number of different people with different names, and they're each their own person.
Okay.
But when Chazal use that method and say, "Oh, this guy's that guy," they're making you think, maybe there's a connection there. Maybe they were both in the same opinion. They were both in the same direction. They had the same attitude, the same worldview. There's lots of things, but saying someone's the same person is not always a historical statement.
And there's a story about that Yehuda's friend, from the story of Yehuda and Tamar, is his friend, I forget his name.
Yeah, what about him?
That he is like, later on, he's a king in the time of like Yeshayahu. Like he's the time of the prophet, so he's like this immortal.
Remember what I told
He
you.
lives a really long time.
It's a mitzvah not to be an idiot. Okay? So people that live 500 years, 700 years, they're trying to tell you something. Not tell you history necessarily. They're trying to tell you the meaning behind history. They're trying to tell you the currents of attitudes and worldviews and philosophies, not just about genealogy. Thank you
I read
very
about
much.
a guy who lived like 900 years, an incredible source.
Micha, you know Pinchas?
Pinchas was Eliyahu. That's right, of course. We
Yeah.
all know that. Pinchas
He
was
must have
Eliyahu.
lived a really long time.
Everybody, please open to page 351. I tried to make a little simple introduction to the laws of Mishteh and showing you how central Mishteh was to the Purim story. We got sidetracked a little bit. But now we got to get to the halacha. One of the 4 mitzvot of Purim is?
Drinking.
No.
No, Seudah.
Mishteh.
Mishteh.
Drinking party, as it's going to be defined now. Different word. Mishe nichnas. Ha ha. All right. What are the 4 mitzvot of Purim?
Mishteh,
Mishlach manot.
gifts to the poor. Remember how to say it.
How do you say it? How do you say gifts to the poor? Matanot levionim and Megillah. Reading the Megillah. We talked about Megillah. We talked about Mishlach manot. We talked about Matanot. Let's talk about Mishteh.
Drinking.
All right. No. Page 351. You're coming. Good. All right. We're going to do this tomorrow. Look at all that. All the introductions.
No, we didn't even get some words.
Achenu.
You'll do that with Yehuda. Yehuda, you'll sing a chayim with the guys.